Oh, hi. Well, as you've noticed, the leaves are beginning to turn, and that can only mean it's time for the annual Wayne County Historical Society Ghost Walk. We're going to be doing things a little differently this year. We're going in chronological order. So please join me as we meet the ghost of Wayne County, who has shaped not only this county's history, but also played pivotal roles in many of the dramatic and consequential events in our own country's history. Let's go.
Greetings, welcome. My name is Dr. Louis K. Holden, and I am the 7th president of the College of Wooster, although at the time it was known as the University of Wooster. My tenure at the college was marked by one specific event, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. It has something to do with this engine behind me. You may already know the story, but I'll fill in the details here as we move forward. But first I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in 1863 in Rome, New York. I was the 4th of 9 children. I led a very traditional, if unspectacular life. I went on to attend Beloit College and then Princeton Seminary. Christian education was always important to me, and that's a large part of the reason that I wound up at the university, then the College of Wooster, of course. I became president in 1899, and I served through 1915. But it was an event that occurred just 2 years into my tenure that would really define my time at the college, and also, to a large extent, affect the history of the college and the community. In the early morning hours of December 1st, 1901, fire broke out in our main academic building, known as Old Main. This engine right here was called and summoned to the scene. Unfortunately, it was no match for a 6-story building that was fully engulfed, and sadly, the building burnt to the ground. Immediately, I was charged with the responsibility of trying to rebuild the college. But how? We had inadequate insurance and not much of an endowment to speak of. So I decided that I would reach out to some of the wealthiest men in America, including Andrew Carnegie. I had approached him a couple of years earlier about funding for our new chapel on campus, not knowing that he was agnostic. He chuckled and said, "I don't think I would support that cause, but if I ever support a Christian college, yours would be the first." I filed that away in the back of my mind, and neither of us knew that that would come so quickly that I would approach him once again. So I packed my bags and headed for the train station here in Worcester and made my way to New York City. But I was so nervous on the day of my appointment that I actually had to walk around the block a couple of times to summon the courage just to ring the doorbell. His butler came to the door and I was invited in, and I explained the situation, saying what has now become a famous line: "Mr. Carnegie, yesterday I was president of a university. Today I am president of a hole in the ground." He seemed somewhat sympathetic, but he said, "It's really not a cause that I can support." Suddenly I had this inspiration, and I shared with him the parable of the Good Samaritan. And like that, his spirit seemed to be changed. Almost immediately, he became sympathetic to our cause. And he said, "You know what? Here's what I'll do. I will make a gift of $100,000 to your cause. But there are several stipulations. Number one, you need to raise $40,000 in your own community." This, of course, would be Wayne County. And then another $100,000 outside of your community. I was, of course, very excited by the opportunity, but bewildered by the thought of having to raise $140,000. And not only that, I had to do it by February 21st. That was his deadline, a scant 2 months after the fire at Old Main. So I hurried back to Wooster and started making plans. I reached out to Louis K. Severance of Cleveland. I talked to him about a possible science building. He was interested, and he offered a gift, a very generous gift, of $50,000. We were on our way. Our students became involved. They would go out to neighboring communities in Orrville, Fredericksburg, Shreve, even Jefferson. They would do one-act plays or readings, things like that, raising a modest amount of money. But we felt it was important to them to have a role in this effort. Also, we received great help from your ancestors. People in this community were extraordinarily helpful. And what happened was we established what came to be known as the Wooster Fund, which still exists to this day. Of course, we called on our alumni as well. And that was not an easy task because they had given just $7,000 in the first 30 years of our existence. But in the next 30 days, they gave generously $18,000. Probably the most heartwarming of all stories was the local children's home, known as an orphanage at the time. Those children got together, they scrapped together their pennies and their nickels and their dimes, and they came up with a gift of $12. We were all touched by that, and it served as the spark for us to move forward. Before we knew it, February 21st had rolled around, and we had done it. We had raised $140,000. Thus, adding to it the grant from Mr. Carnegie, we had enough money to rebuild the University of Wooster and what would one day become the College of Wooster. But realizing the error of our ways and understanding that we could no longer risk a catastrophic fire, we decided to construct 4 buildings: Cowk Hall, Severance Hall, Scoville Hall, and Taylor Hall. And I'm very proud to say that those 4 buildings exist and are fully functional to this very day. That is the story of the rebirth of the College of Wooster. I came to be known as the builder of the new Wooster. Of course, I was very flattered by that. Some years later, they constructed a building in my honor, Holden Residence Hall, which also still exists to this day. We are so very grateful in this community to have a college like the College of Wooster. I really appreciate your time today to listen to this historic story, part of our lore here in the city of Wooster. And I would encourage you in the weeks and months and years ahead to continue to support this great college and this great community.
We hope you have enjoyed these presentations. As someone who values the promotion and the preservation of our unique Wayne County history as much as we do, please consider making a donation to or becoming a member of the Wayne County Historical Society. Thank you.